Hey everybody, my name is Elliott Stein and I cover financials litigation for Bloomberg Intelligence, the investment research platform on the Bloomberg Terminal. I want to take a few minutes today to highlight some of the important cases that we're tracking that we expect will affect financial institutions in 2024. I'm going to keep this video short and high level, but please feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions afterwards. You can email me or you can call me at the contact info shown on the slide here. So the first case I want to talk about is the SEC's lawsuit against crypto platform Coinbase, arguably one of the most important cases in crypto and one that has a key hearing on January 17th. As background, the SEC sued Coinbase in June, accusing the company of violating federal securities laws by allegedly operating as an unregistered securities exchange, broker, and clearing agency. Coinbase has billions of dollars at stake in this litigation, representing the allegedly ill-gotten gains that the SEC aims to disgorge. This slide here shows Coinbase's net income during the relevant period. We like Coinbase's chances of prevailing in this litigation. Specifically, we think Coinbase's primary argument for dismissal is strong, namely that sales of digital assets on public exchanges, like those on Coinbase, don't fit neatly into the Howey test for what constitutes an investment contract, which is a security. That was the main takeaway from a court decision in July in the SEC's case against Ripple, and we think it's one that will gain traction in the Coinbase case as well. The next key date again to watch is January 17th, when the parties will be in court for oral arguments on Coinbase's motion for judgment on the pleadings. We expect a decision on that motion sometime in 2Q or 3Q. Another major case that we're tracking is a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the CFPB's funding structure. The CFPB, of course, is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the chief regulator for the consumer finance sector. And as you can see from the slide here, the agency has exacted billions of dollars from companies over the years. This lawsuit was argued in the Supreme Court on October 3rd, and we expect a decision in the first half of the year. Now, following oral argument in October, the consensus among observers was that the High Court was surprisingly sympathetic to the CFPB. We, however, continue to think that the court will rule against the CFPB and against its funding structure, finding it unconstitutional. In particular, we think it's important that Justice Kavanaugh agreed with the challenger's point that Congress had, quote, flipped the baseline, end quote, by delegating the CFPB's appropriations determinations to the executive branch. We anticipate a High Court ruling that essentially punts the funding question to Congress, which will then require the CFPB to go through the normal congressional appropriations process for funding. We also think that companies like Navient, the student loan servicer, which raised the funding issue as a defense against a CFPB enforcement action, will be more likely to win dismissal following the Supreme Court's decision. Another lawsuit where we think industry has the upper hand against the government is a lawsuit filed in September by trade groups on behalf of hedge funds and private equity firms challenging the SEC's private funds rule, which was finalized in August. The rule would enhance the regulation of private fund advisors, requiring them, among other things, to provide investors with more detailed statements concerning performance, fees, and expenses. We think the trade groups have a 70% chance of winning this lawsuit. Specifically, we think they have strong arguments that the SEC is exceeding its authority and that the costs of the rule outweigh the benefits. I should also add that the lawsuit was filed in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which, as this slide shows, has a majority of judges appointed by Republican presidents and has tended to be pretty hostile to what it perceives to be regulatory overreach. In terms of timing, written arguments on the trade group's lawsuit are expected to end January 22nd, followed by oral argument likely in 1Q and then a decision possibly in 2Q. Now, we also expect the SEC to finalize its climate disclosure rule in 2024 and also its market structure rule. Litigation challenging both those rules is almost a certainty, and we think those challenges will have good odds of succeeding given the composition of the federal appeals courts and a U.S. Supreme Court that is skeptical of administrative overreach. And last but not least, we're also tracking Turkish bank Halkbank's fight against the U.S. Department of Justice criminal charges. Now, the U.S. charged Halkbank in 2019 with violating U.S. sanctions on Iran. In April, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the bank's arguments for statutory immunity, but the court sent the case back down to the lower courts for further review of Halkbank's arguments for immunity under the common law. Oral arguments here are scheduled for February 28th in the Federal Appeals Court in New York, and we expect a ruling in 2Q or 3Q. We think Halkbank is likely to once again lose its arguments for immunity, since this appeals court has already rejected the bank's arguments, and we think the common law favors judicial deference to the executive branch on sovereign immunity decisions. Halkbank could have more than $1 billion at stake, reflecting the amount of money that allegedly passed through the U.S. in violation of U.S. sanctions, and we think the bank could wind up settling for somewhere between $1 billion and $2 billion, which, as you can see from the chart here, could be multiples of the bank's net income. But we'll be watching oral arguments in February to see if our view changes. So in the interest of time, I'm going to stop here with my summary of cases that we're watching in 2024. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you want more information about any of these cases. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and I'll see you in 2024.